Well, it's that magical time of year again where we put away our Commodores and instead concentrate on the competition. It's Feb-Tari time, and so I've pulled out the 800XL here. If you remember back to last year, we got this machine up and running by replacing some faulty RAM in it. We built a new PSU for it, and then I went and broke the keyboard by trimming the membrane in there too short to reach the connector on the motherboard. But that's where Tim Smeeks came to the rescue, because he kindly sent us a new membrane for it, although that will not be the main focus of this video. Rather, he also sent us something in here. This is the A8PICOCART, uses a Raspberry Pi Pico and allows us to load games directly onto the 800XL. Now before I do that, I am going to have to install this thing quickly. Can't use the ATARI without this. And with that done, let's take a look at the PICOCART. So this should be a relatively straightforward build. All we need to do is mount the Pico on this PCB via these pin headers and fit a button. Tim did include this little right angle set of pins, presumably to go on there on the Pico, but I don't think that's required. We can always come back and do it later if it is. First question I have though is, does the Pico go on that side or does it go on that side? So let's take a look on the GitHub. This is an open source project. You can download the Gerbers for the PCB and get the firmware for the Pico. So anyone can build one of these. Well, if we scroll down through this, well, there's a picture of the two types of boards. Ours is the one on the right, and he has the Pico on top with the button on the right, the button below. So it must go on like that. Now, this isn't actually a genuine Raspberry Pi Pico. In fact, you can't use a genuine Raspberry Pi Pico. You have to use this purple version of it. This one has a couple of extra GPIO pins, just to meet the actual pin count of the ATARI cartridge itself. But these things are only a couple of pounds. You can pick them up from various places. I think I seen one on AliExpress for £1.50 plus another £1.50 postage, so you know, £3. And those PCBs themselves would be very cheap to get manufactured. I'm fairly sure you could make yourself one of these for under £10. Although a thought has just occurred. Is the Raspberry Pi Pico not just a 3.3 volt device? It can maybe take a 5 volt supply. You can maybe feed 5 volt into it. A couple of chunky traces around here, so one of them might be VCC or 5 volt supply. That component there might well be a 3.3 volt regulator. But the GPIO on this will just go straight to the Raspberry Pi itself, which I think is an RP2040, which I'm not sure if that's 5 volt tolerant or not. I mean, this project has been floating around for a few years now, so I'm hardly the first person to have built one or use one. So, I mean, it must be fine. But let me Google it. And yeah, according to Google's AI anyway, no, the original Raspberry Pi Pico RP2040 is not 5 volt tolerant on its GPIO pins. So maybe there should be some sort of level shifting involved here, but I don't know. As I say, I'm not the first person to build one of these, so it must just work okay. I mean, obviously the logic level inside the 800XL is all going to be at 5 volt. We're connecting to the address bus and the data bus, and I'm sure there's some control signals there as well. All that will be driven by the ATARI, and it'll all be driven to 5 volts. But let's not worry about it too much. Let's just get this built. Or maybe it's a case that this clone is somehow 5 volt tolerant. I don't know. Let's just stop thinking about it. Alright, so I've purposely put that on as we did there with the longer side of those pin strips sticking through the board. We'll solder that up here and then I'll just go along and snip all that off. And you might have noticed there when we were looking at the GitHub, there is a 3D printable case for this, so we'll make sure to print out one of those before we're finished today. Okay, so we need a button, but because we're going to put this into a 3D printed case, I'm going to use one of my buttons here with quite a long stem on it. After trimming legs like that, I just like to throw a bit of flux on it and just reflow. Just tidies up the sharp edges and all. Gives them a wee coat of solder. There we are. I'll give it a quick clean, then we'll program it and test it. Cleaned up really well, so let's get it programmed. Back on the GitHub, we need the firmware and download this file. So we'll grab the raw copy of that. Well, let's also just take a look in the manual, see if we can figure out how to program it. There we are, firmware reprogramming. To program a new version of the firmware to the cart, unscrew shell, cartridge, that's what we need, the bare PCB. Should be a single button on the purple Pico board, which is that one, boot select. Press and hold this as you connect the cartridge to your PC with a USB cable. The cartridge will mount as a mass storage device. Should be a device labeled RPI RP2. Reprogram the Raspberry Pi by dragging that file we downloaded into the Explorer window. That seems to be it. Just seems to program itself if we do that, so let's just do it. Yeah, Windows has indeed found a new device, RPI RP2. So we just need to drag that into there. Maybe not. Aye, just drag that to there. So is that it? I don't know. The device will disappear and remount as an A8 PICOCART. Well, no, it didn't do that. The device disappeared and then remounted just as the same thing. Aye, okay. Now it's A8 PICOCART. And if we look in that welcome text file, ATARI 8-bit PICOCART, copyright 2023, electro trains, drag ROM car or XEX files in here. So yeah, that does seem to be it set up. Now all we need is some software. So for that, I put a call out on the CRG Discord, and Mike, who's our resident Atari expert, he came good with 3 files here that he wants us to try. So let's just download these, get them transferred onto this, and let's see what they are. Now, I haven't printed the cartridge cover for this yet, so just before we do, stick that in there. Those doors are metallic. I don't want them shorting out anything, so we'll take a bit of Captain tape and we'll just put that around this, just around those pins at the bottom of it there. Hopefully stop anything going bang on us. This side to top or front. Another thing I noticed actually is that the edge of this cartridge isn't chamfered. Don't actually know if the original Atari carts would have been chamfered. I mean, there's an original 2600 cartridge, and yeah, the edge of that is chamfered okay, so we'll maybe just run a file along the edge of that there before we're finished as well. But I'm keen to see how this works, and there it is. It has booted to the cartridge. We can navigate it using the joystick. What does Dance Now do? I think these are all demo scene productions. Get Stupid and Dance Now. Bit of Atari 8-bit dance party. That is pretty cool. So how do we get back to try and run something else? If we just try to reset the machine, it just drops you into basic, or it's supposed to anyway. What we need to do is use that button. So we need to reset the cartridge, then reset the machine, and then we get back to the bootloader. Party time 23. Don't want to bore you with too much of this now. I will give all this a proper look later. So let's just try the other one. Reset cartridge, reset machine. It is normal there when you reset the cartridge that it crashes the ATARI, obviously. And we can't run that one because that program requires at least 4 extra memory banks installed. That's one thing we haven't done to this machine yet. We haven't modified it or upgraded it in any real significant way, so that could be something we look at doing in the future. But that's a couple of demo scene productions. How about a game? Okay, we have a couple of games on this now. You can see I've split it up into directories here. You can't just make directories, within Windows Explorer, just like you would normally. I stuck those 3 demos into the demos directory. But in games, we've got Acrobat, Jet Boot Jack, and Rainbow Walker. Acrobat was recommended by Snorkers. Quite a bit of noise in that video signal there, isn't there? Is there anything I can do to the little ATARI here to try and clean that up a bit? If you have any suggestions, maybe drop them down in the comments below. So yeah, it does feel like a very Snorkers game. The type of thing you might see him modifying over on his YouTube channel, on say the ZX Spectrum. Very simple game, but very addictive. Next up then we have Jet Boot Jack. This one was recommended by Rich's Retro Reviews. Another one of my fellow YouTubers. Oh. What are we meant to do in this game? So we collect the musical notes, and if I press the fire button, Jack ducks there for a second. But that thing on the ceiling kills me. As does that thing. I'm not very good at this. Yeah, I'm hopeless at this. I dare say you could get quite good at it with a bit of practice. 1,100 odd points. I'll take that for a first a go. And then the last game here, Rainbow Walker. This was recommended by our good friend the Goldfish. He says this one is quite impressive. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm assuming we're just meant to keep going here until that little pink guy at the bottom catches us or I fall off. But yeah, certainly out of the three that we've tried so far, rather technically impressive looking game anyway, I would think. That time I got carried away by a bird. I'm sure some people are cringing at my rather questionable gaming skills. But I mean, this is the first time I've ever played anything on an Atari 800. So bear with me maybe. So do we maybe have to like try and colour in all the grey squares? Is that the object? Because our little friend there is undoing the rainbow colours that I'm leaving behind. Anyway, another game for the 800 XL. So just a couple of things to finish off then today. The 3D printer is currently making us the case for this, but as I said, the edge of that is not chamfered and has a square edge. So I just want to take a little bit off that with the file here. And hopefully you can see that there. We now have a bit of a point at the end of that. That just means when we're putting it into the Atari, it'll spread the contacts on the Atari's cartridge slot, allow this to go in. Sometimes with a square edge like that, you can catch one of those contacts and bend it. And if you do that, then you're in all sorts of trouble. That's essentially a replacement cartridge slot for your computer, be it the Atari, or I've even had that happen to me on my Amiga 1200, where I'm putting a CPU card in. Damaged the slot on the CPU card because the CPU slot on my Amiga, it had a square edge. It doesn't anymore. So that's the A8 PICOCART. I am very impressed with this little thing. Incredibly simple to put together, incredibly cheap to put together. It really is just the PCB, the purple Pico, and the button. We've got it in its case now, obviously, through which the USB port is exposed on the bottom there. So you can still plug this in easily enough to put more games or software on it. Speaking of which, that purple Pico has 16 megabytes of storage on it. By the time you put the PICOCART software on there, you're left with about 15.5 megabytes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you need to remember that the games or the software for your Atari here, they're all about 10 to 40 kilobytes in size. So you're not going to fit a full games library on your A8 PICOCART, but you're going to get, what, a couple of hundred games on it. There's plenty of room here to keep you going. And speaking of games, another one that I tried is this, Yomp. Very impressive, very, very addictive. Although I've only made it up to level 7 so far. I will be getting straight back to it though, when we're finished with this. But the reason I wanted to mention that, one thing I noticed actually in the menu of that game was that it supports stereo sound. And Mike over on the CRG Discord, well, he confirmed that you can put a second Pokey in this, much like you could put a second SID in the Commodore 64 to give you stereo output. I could be tempted to look at that, or are there any other modifications that you think would be worthwhile doing? Besides that though, we are not finished with the Atari 800 XL and cartridges, because next week I've got something to build to go in there to hopefully put this online. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. If you want to see the keyboard membrane installation along with another bonus fault that just cropped up, a full video of that is available for patrons and YouTube members. But as for this video, well, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed what you've seen. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. There's still plenty more yet to come here on CRG, and I'll see you next time.